Welcome to the Indomitable podcast. I'm your host, Di Cerullo, and today we have another great episode that will leave you inspired. My guest today is the indomitable John Register. John is a two-time Paralympian, a Paralympic Games silver medalist, a Persian Gulf War veteran, and a TEDx motivational speaker who inspires people to live healthier, wealthier, more fulfilling, passionate, and purposeful lives. Wow. Well, hello, John. I am so grateful to have you here today.
Di, it is so great to be on your podcast, the Indomitable podcast. Thank you so much for reaching out and inviting me to share with your audience.
How could we have an Indomitable podcast without having you on, John? Honestly.
Get out of here.
Oh, stop. I am so grateful to have you. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and how we got here?
I think the easiest way to kind of set everything I might say in this conversation is to give everyone just a snapshot of my life journey. And then we can talk about any one of those.
Yes.
I was a 4-time track and field All-American and ran for the University of Arkansas high hurdles, long jump, and the mile relay team. I think we won altogether 42 national championships. That took me to the Olympic trials in 1988. And I joined the United States Army in 1988 as well to continue to run track and field because the Army had a world-class track and field team. Before I went out to compete for the Army, I was diverted to the Gulf War. So for the next 6 months, 7 months in the desert, I served the United States Army in Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm, came back without a scratch. And when I went back to the World-Class Athlete Program, found out I couldn't run the high hurdles any longer because my rhythm was off. I had spent too much time away from the discipline. So I switched to the 400-meter hurdles. And because of that, I wound up finding my race. After 5 races, I actually qualified for the Olympic trials. So I decided to do another 4 years in the military in order to make the 1996 Olympic Games. But on May 17th, 1994, I was training in Hays, Kansas. And I went across a hurdle. I landed awkwardly, which dislocated my left knee. The dislocation, 7 days later, through complications, wound up having the disruption to the popliteal artery, which caused the sickness of gangrene inside the leg. So I was left with either a useless left leg or I could face an amputation. So I chose door number 2. So here I was, 29 years old, on my way to officer candidate school, going to do 20 years of military service. I was ranked in the top 8 in the United States, on my way to try to represent the United States in the 400-meter hurdles at the Olympic Games in Atlanta, Georgia. And now I'm flat on my back and I'm missing one leg. It could have been a lot worse, I believe, than it actually turned out to be. Because I had a great support system around me that would not allow me to fail. And it was my wife, Alice, who said, you know what, John, we're going to get through this together. It's just our new normal. If you could imagine that, right? Because during this time, 6 years of marriage we're into, here I was thinking, am I still a father to my son? Is my wife going to still stay with me because of this injury? Do I still have a job in the military? Can I support my family? I mean, my Olympic dreams are over.
Yes.
And here was this woman that was undergirding me with that love. So I did. I retooled, found parallel paths, and wound up ending my term in the military service and started working for the Army's World-Class Athlete Program as a civilian and swimming at the same time. So swimming was my outlet. It was I could get my body back in shape. I didn't have a prosthetic, didn't know how to run, all those things. Didn't know running was even available to me at that point in time. And lo and behold, 27 months after my injury and swimming for physical therapy, I wound up making what I would know as the Paralympic Games, the Paralympic team. So the Paralympic Games are the games that are parallel to the Olympics. Who knew? I didn't even know there was a parallel games. So I'm always talking about how do you find your parallel path. Didn't even realize it was there. I saw athletes running and jumping die on artificial legs, and I had a leg made for running. And then 2 years later, I taking my first step. 4 years later, I won the silver medal in the long jump in Sydney, Australia, becoming the only American to jump over 17 and a half feet without a leg or a knee.
Wow.
And that, kind of encapsulates the sports story. After I hung my spikes up, I started working for the United States Olympic Committee and became the founder of what became known as the Paralympic Military Sport Program. Now, this program worked with wounded, ill, and injured service members to use sports as a tool for their rehabilitation. Sound familiar?
Yes.
So my life story of what I did individually became the impetus for thousands upon thousands of veterans around the world now, because that program turned into the Department of Defense's Warrior Games.
Yes.
That program got the interest of the Princess Diana Fund, and Prince
Mhm.
Harry started Invictus Games because of that program. So we never know where our life is going to take us, but as long as we're able to find the parallel paths in our lives, whatever that means for each one of us as individuals, those of you out there listening to this podcast right now, that's the indomitable spirit. That's
Yes.
how you push forward. You get people around you that will not allow you to fail, and then you take small action steps, and you never know where it's going to take you. So that's my story in a nutshell. I'm going to stick to it.
Every time I hear your story, I'm just more and more in awe of you as a person and your resilience. Wow. And I talk about this on the podcast all the time. This is yet another example of a person becoming the adult they needed in their hardest moment. This is another example of somebody becoming successful by accepting what their purpose was. And I think that's incredible. I love that. That's so great. All the love to Alice. How did you make that decision? How did you make the decision to amputate the leg?
It wasn't as hard as you might think. Because, there are times in our lives where it is so painful that you just don't want to take another step,
Yes.
or you can't, or you just don't feel you can take another breath.
Yes.
And that's the moment I was in prior to making the decision. I was in so much pain. I just wanted somebody to alleviate the pain for me. And my
Right.
male deductive reasoning said, if I could just get rid of my leg, I'll get rid of my pain.
Yes. Yes.
But usually what happens, Di, is even though we remove the thing that we think is the most painful,
Mm-hmm.
we still have phantom pains
Yes.
because of it.
Yes.
And so it's still with us. It's still in our mental mindset.
Yes. I think a lot of times when we're in that kind of pain, we can be at a non-choice, right? We can be paralyzed with fear, right? And you're saying, no, I was in so much pain that I was more afraid to continue the pain than I was at the place of losing the leg potentially. How do you feel about that choice today? Do you feel like you would have changed anything, or did you feel like the choice was made from the time of the injury?
That is such a spot on question. In that moment, that was a choice that I made. And when we make a choice, we make a commitment, that is now the new path that we are
Yes.
on.
Yes.
And when we make that choice and we're on that new path, we can't go back and second guess
No.
what
Yeah.
happened.
Right.
Because we could always fill our cup up with what ifs.
Mm.
What if
Yes.
I went to college? What if I would have went to the military? What if I would have taken that job? We can't go back because we don't know.
Yeah.
What we can do is forecast that question into our future.
Yes.
Maybe I want to look 30 years down the road. Where do I want to be 30 years from now? And
Yes.
then what are the choices I need to make today in order to get there? Because I can do something about that.
Yes.
So
Yes.
when I look back, Di, it's never about shifting or
Mm.
what if I would have made another decision?
Yes.
Because I can't, because the decision's already been made. But what I
No.
can do right now, Di, is I can get a team around me that can
Yes.
see my blind spots and I
Yes.
can see theirs. So I can
Right.
focus on the things that I do best without having to
Mm-hmm.
worry about somebody else because they got me covered on
Mm-hmm.
other areas of my life. And we interact,
Yes.
we cover each other for that. And
Yes.
so that's why it's important to be around great people who will tell you
Yes.
exactly what you need to hear in the moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Would you say that the thing you were overcoming became sort of your journey in life and your way of helping other people succeed in that same way?
Yes. And here's why. Most people think that what I overcame is the amputation to my left leg.
Right. Right.
Once I realized that was not what I overcame,
Right.
I was able to help other people better.
Right.
And here's what I mean. I was preparing for my first TEDx speech, and I was about to call the curator and tell him, I don't have it. I don't have anything to say. I have nothing new to add.
Mm-hmm.
to this resilience conversation. So I'm in a heated conversation with a buddy of mine because he's like, don't quit. I don't want you to quit.
Yeah.
I'm not quitting. I said, I just don't have anything to offer. I don't have anything to add. He said, well, you overcame so much. You overcame your amputation. And I fired back in that moment. I said, I did not overcome the amputation of my left leg, because had I overcome the amputation of my left leg, I'd have my leg back. And so that
Right.
became this first thread.
Mm-hmm.
We're usually not overcoming the thing that we're
Yes.
actually going through.
That's right. That's
We're
right.
overcoming our mindset and what other people told us about that experience.
That's
What we've
right.
internalized. That's what we have to overcome.
Yes.
All those negative thoughts that we had about that situation
Yes.
before we got into that situation.
That situation. Yep.
And we
Yep.
told ourselves, I will never get in this situation. All of a sudden we find ourselves in that very situation.
In that very situation. Yep.
Right. I'm never going to drink again. And then somebody takes a drink.
Mm-hmm.
What we're overcoming are the things, the mindset of what would have us go back to that previous state of existence.
Right.
And so that became my model
mm-hmm.
of overcoming. Yeah.
So overcoming perhaps your own limitations, or at least your beliefs about your limitations. Is that fair? Something you say that you have overcome?
Yes, I think that's part of it. So the first thing is we have this point of reckoning.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the first piece. When I go back and I really unpack what I went through,
yes,
there was a point of reckoning. The reckoning moment was, I'm never going to get back what I used to have back.
Right. Right.
What I desire to have back.
Yes.
Right. I'm never getting that back. Because I don't get back what I desire to have back, I have to hurdle that moment.
Right. Yeah.
But people will say, I'm guilty. I've said this too. I still say it sometimes. Man, I just wish things would go back to normal. Can't we just go back to the way things used to be? Let's go back, because that was the better time. Well, my memory thinks about it at a better time. It might not have been a better time, but my memory thinks it was a better time.
That's right.
Than what I'm in right now. So it's a false sense of security. And secondly, we can't go back. We never can go back. Like I said earlier.
No.
That time has passed. We should have learned something. During the pandemic, people said, I don't want to be in this pandemic. Let's go back to before it was pandemic.
Right.
We don't get that back. No. So once I have that, now I jump from the reckoning moment to the revision moment.
Right.
Revision moment is hard to hurdle because we're casting a new vision. We're seeing the parallel path, but we haven't committed to that path yet.
That's right.
And there are three things that hold us back. The first are other people. Other people who believe for us what we can or cannot do, which is based on what they believe they could or could not do if they were in our situation.
That's absolutely right. Yep.
The second are society norms. So society tells us things about ourselves that we believe. So we normalize around what society says. Yes. Every Halloween, we go out, we dress up in makeup, and we put on witches' costumes and the warts over our faces, or we dress up as Freddy Krueger, or we dress up as Jason, and we see the mask on because we want to celebrate and be afraid of mental health. So now we're trying to have a mental health conversation, we can't.
Yes.
Because society has said that is wrong. Yes. And I'm going to be like the Joker or the Freddy Kruegers, or I want to have some type of mental derangement.
Right.
Now I can't have a true conversation around mental health.
Yeah.
So that's hard to break away from that. And third, as you said, you're the one that has to do it.
You're the one who has to do it. Yep.
I've had some of the world's best hurdle coaches. None of them ever ran over a hurdle for me.
Right.
I have to attack those hurdles that are in my life, and only I can attack. Only I know if I've attacked the hurdle. I could tell you that I've attacked it, and I haven't attacked it.
Yep.
I could still be at a point of reckoning, right?
Yes.
But I'm telling you that I'm not. So I have to be truthful with myself.
Yes.
To move that forward. Once I've hurdled that, now I'm in the renewal, and with a renewed mind, I come to a point of this rebirth.
Yes.
Rebirth is that's the hardest part of the model, because we now cannot use anything that is old in the new. It's impossible. Yep. We've crossed a chasm. but you want to go back. You have phantom pains, like I said, to go back to a previous state of existence that's no longer available to you because you've crossed the chasm. You've
That's right.
committed to the new vision. So I was talking to a reporter the other day, and I told her, she asked me to give me an example. I said, I got up in the morning one time when I first had my amputation, because I had to go to the bathroom at night. And I forgot I didn't have a leg. And I got out of bed, stepped down, and wham, I went down.
Yes.
Because I took a step. I was like, oh, there's no leg there. Right.
Yes.
So I have to remember that my previous state is gone.
Yes.
And I might hurt myself if I try to go back across the chasm. So now I have to give myself space and grace to grow. I have to relearn things that are new and things that are not so new. I have to learn how to manipulate a wheelchair to a prosthetic appointment.
Yes.
I have to learn how do I put on an artificial leg? What is this thing? How do I walk between the parallel bars and get my balance? To get my balance.
Yeah.
Parallel bars to a walker to crutches to free walking to running to jumping to a Paralympic medal. That process took 7 years.
I bet. Yep.
Yeah. So can we shorten the time? So we have the reckoning moment, the revision, and the renewal. So once I've done that, I'm resolved, I'm resolute in who I am.
Yeah.
And in my renewal, now I've reached a plateau, which is my reward. But the plateau is not the destination.
No.
It can be a destination. But it's a plateau for the next level of growth.
Right.
Yeah.
What would you, if you could go back, and that's what's making me think. If you could say something to yourself in that moment, what do you think you would tell you in that moment?
I know what I tell myself now, and that is trust the process. You have been created and designed uniquely, very distinct for only one thing, John, that you can do in this world. And you are designed to do that thing. So don't go chasing after what somebody else has.
That's right.
Focus on what you are designed to do.
Right.
And that's sometimes hard because you see other people might have more success in however we're defining success, because success is only comparable to what I think success looks like.
That's right.
And we might think we might start thinking ourselves as less than because of that. I'm not up to par. I'm not doing as good as somebody else. But in reality, we're doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing in this earth.
That's
on this earth for our time that's here. Yeah.
Interestingly enough, that the expression for that is run your own race, right? We tell people to run their own race when we have those conversations. It sounds to me like you ran exactly the race you were here to run. And you go on after that moment to just inspire so many more people and help so many more folks who are going through the exact same thing that you went through. And that's a tremendous way to spend your time here on earth. So I think of you all the time. I'm going to get up today because I know John's out there. I know John's out there running his race, So I hear that you are now one of the top 50 global international speakers. Tell me a little bit about how that feels. You made the list.
Oh, wow.
You're amongst other stars. How do you feel about that?
It's kind of surreal.
Yeah.
I just try to live life one day at a time. I know it's cliche, but we really sometimes just 1 minute at a time.
Yes.
It's really it's difficult just to think so far ahead because we don't know what's going to happen in the next hour.
Yes.
Right. So we just got to live that moment to moment and just really celebrate and appreciate the moments. But sometimes the aggregate of all those moments, somebody is watching that.
Yeah.
Somebody's seeing the impact that is going on. And this company, Real Leaders, was one of those companies that was, I guess, looking at me. Kind of unbeknownst to me, I was on their podcast, and but I don't think too much about it. But they were watching wherever I was out there, kind of seeing what international or global impact that my presentation was having.
Right.
And 2 weeks ago, I found out that I had made this list of the top 50 global speakers in the world. But so I'm looking at the list and like, well, what does that mean? So I wanted to see who was on the list. And then I'm like Tony Robbins is number one, and Brene Brown and Mel Robbins and Simon Sinek. I was like, holy cow, these are
Yes.
some this is like some heavy hitters.
Yeah.
I
Like
wouldn't really
you.
yeah, like me, yeah.
Like
I wouldn't
you.
really call them keynote speakers, right? They speak,
No.
but
Yeah.
they're major influencers, and yeah, I was very honored, and what it did for me, Di, it showed me the gravity of what I'm sharing right now, right?
Yeah.
And it's making international impacts.
Yes.
And sometimes I just do it on a day-to-day basis, and I don't see
Right.
how far the reach is.
Right. Because you're
Yeah,
just doing the work day to day, right? Like you're
just do
just
the
getting
work.
up every day, doing what's on your calendar,
Right,
talking to as many people as you can get to. I mean, I know I am every
right.
day getting up, doing the thing, doing the work. And you don't always see how much of an impact you're making day to day, right? I'm just constantly learning from you, not even just about how to, quote unquote, overcome. You teach me so much about how to be a person, right? Like, I learn so much from you about why we're here,
Oh,
what this journey is about. I'm always so inspired, I guess is really the only word for like whenever I'm lucky enough to be following someone like you, lucky
oh,
enough to have you in my circle. I'm just always so, so grateful. So, on that note, I know that you're doing 90-day leadership sprints. Tell me a little bit about that.
sure. Thank you. And I want to go back just a little bit. You
Mm.
said something that sparked something. I'll get into the 90-day sprints in a second. I used to hate the word inspiration
Yes. Yes.
because when I was training as a Olympic class athlete and I did a record or won an event, a sports reporter would come over and interview me, and I would be
Mm-hmm.
in the sports pages, or I would be on the sports section of the news that night.
Mm-hmm.
When I became a Paralympic athlete and I won an event or set a record, if there was a reporter there, it would be a human interest story reporter, and I would be
Yes.
on the Metro section
Right.
where I would be the inspirational story at the end. So it felt as if people
Yes.
were levitating or leveling up on my disability
Yes.
instead of honoring my performance.
Yes.
So that sucked. I didn't like that feeling.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I resisted the word inspiration
Mm.
until I was in an airport in San Francisco wearing shorts, have my artificial running leg with me. I'm
Mm-hmm.
reading a newspaper, and a woman and her two children are having a conversation, and the two boys have made a new discovery.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, "Hey, there's Robot Man over there."
Yep.
And so she gets up, she comes over against all these naysayers that are telling her in the gate waiting area to leave that man alone, don't get up, sit polite to
Yes.
stare.
Yes.
And she has this ensuing conversation, and I won't get into the whole story, but at the end of it, she thanked me for my time, shook my hand. I signed a couple autographs for them because I was just coming back from the Paralympic Games.
Mm-hmm.
Let them wear the medal, and off they went. And everybody's conversation changed. How cool is that? Did you hear that
Yeah.
story? Those kids' lives will never be the same. I
Yes.
thought to myself, how many times did I miss this? I said,
Yes.
wow, just because I was sitting in an airport wearing shorts, showing my artificial leg, somebody was inspired to act.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's when I began thinking differently about this word inspiration, which actually comes from the Latin word inspiro, which means to breathe into. So I want to always be breathing into other people, which gets me to the 90-day sprints. Over the last year, I've been using this new survey tool called Talk a Dot. And so towards the end of my presentations, I get people to evaluate the presentation. And about 60% of them do, 60 to 70% evaluate it.
That's great.
And in that time, they get a chance to ask or tell me if they want to stay connected.
Mm-hmm.
So for over the course of the year, I had like 7,000 people who were in this database that wanted to stay connected. And I was connected with them a little bit, but I wasn't staying,
Right.
to be honest, really connected with everybody.
Right.
So I want to know how I could do that better and offer value. Because some of them have said, how do we keep the conversation going? How do we keep this leadership message moving forward? I want to be a better leader, a better communicator. I want to use my words more effectively. So over Christmas last year, started writing out like a little plan.
Mm-hmm.
And it came out into four buckets. So I called them these leadership sprints.
Yes.
And so people can sign up. It's not a lot of money at all. Full year, and you
Mm,
get 4 sprints, and we'll keep on doing it for next year. If people want to do it, if it's still something of value, we'll do it. If not, we shut it down. So
mm.
it's really on the market demand. Uh,
Yeah.
but we're trying to build a community, right?
Yes.
And the community are those individuals that you can network with
Mm-hmm.
to help you get through your whatever leadership challenge that you might be struggling with, and keep it inside
Yes.
this ecosystem. So that's what the 9-day sprints are, and I try to make it as affordable so I can just pay the staff to run it. I don't make that much
Mm-hmm.
money off it, but but I think it's really good for people just to network and connect one with each other.
So, John, just speaking for myself, I remember when I came on your podcast years ago, and I didn't want to be called a motivational speaker. It was exactly what you're talking about. I didn't want people to look over at me and say, well, at least it's better than what, she went through, or sort of using me in that way. I always kind of felt like sometimes people would use us as props for arguments,
Right.
right? Like they would, well, at least you didn't grow up in foster care. Oh, at least how would you like it if you did? You know what I mean? And it always felt to me so, I didn't want to be part of that, right? I didn't
Yeah.
want to be what you look at so that you feel better. But when I had that conversation with you years ago, you were just so understanding of that place in a way I hadn't had conversations with people like that yet.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen people who had really gone through anything and understood what it felt like to be looked at in that way. And so, when you talk about leadership and just the role you play in it, even just in my lifetime of knowing you, you changed the trajectory of my life by teaching me that that wasn't what it was about. And maybe if it was about that for some people, it wasn't about that for everybody. And that I could do real work by
Yeah.
accepting and owning my story and deciding what direction it would take. So, just speaking for myself, your leadership has inspired me to own my own story and have the strength to carry it forward to inspire other people. So, if you are asking me if I think you should buy John's leadership courses, yes. Yes, I think you should be part of any community that John starts. So,
Oh my gosh, that was so sweet.
oh well, no, I truly do mean it. You really have just changed how I think about this, and it's really enabled me and empowered me to have such a greater understanding of what I'm meant to do here, and it really did matter. So I wanted to make sure I thanked you where people could see you getting your flowers for that. So you're an amazing keynote speaker. How do people hire you? What's your next awesomest gig?
That's such a great question. So you're learning a whole bunch from me. I always say, what's my best speech? It's the next one, right? So always
Yes, the next one.
next one. Uh, the best way for folks to book me to come in is to go to our website, which is johnregister.com. And so there's like a booking link that's on there, and you
Mm-hmm.
can poke around, you see some videos and things just to kind of get a sense of who I am. What makes me unique in the space, and I'm so glad that you said you kind of pushed against motivation. Zig Ziglar says motivation is needed because every time we get up in the morning, we bathe in it. We gotta wash ourselves off. It's like taking a bath, and we do
Yes.
need that. But the thing
Yes.
that gets us up, the breath that comes into our body, is the inspiration. So
Yes.
it's the thought of what we're going to do with our life on this day, and then we get up and we move and we take our shower. So it
Yes.
causes us to act, right?
Right.
So that's why I say it's the inspirational act. But for SEO purposes, right, to be found, people really they look for motivational speakers because they don't know what they're really looking for.
Right.
We
That's
got for
right.
SEO purposes. I will put that out there in some areas of motivation, but I'm really an
Yeah.
inspirational speaker. So yeah, so that's the way to get a hold of me, johnregister.com. I will say that the reason I'm a little bit different is because I have a methodology that morphs two worlds together, a training world and a keynote speaking world, because I
Yes.
came from training. So I
Mm-hmm.
always have to teach something.
Yes.
uh, and I don't spoon feed people. I
Right.
let you do your own work. So
Mm-hmm.
that means I will share a story. I will share my point to the story, and then I'll
Yes.
invite the audience to say, "Well, what about you? How did you think about X, Y, or Z?" and then
Yes.
we'll work with it, we'll wrestle with it in your own vernacular, in your own team,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'll synthesize that information back, right? So now
Right.
everybody is learning from the one story. Because to be
Right.
honest, nobody wants to know my story. They want to know how my story actually impacts them to do better.
That's
So
right.
let's put that into that context. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So them being able to see themselves in your story is the thing that shows them their own path. I completely agree. I always say this, but I feel like this conversation could go on forever, but I have to let you get back to your life. So other than your website, how else do people follow you? How else do they support you? Where should they find you?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I do several things right now. One, I have a podcast with a woman named Kat Coppett.
Yep.
We do a live every other Saturday morning from
Mm-hmm.
I think it's 9:30 Eastern time. And you can just follow that on LinkedIn. I think we're also
Mm-hmm.
pushing out on the YouTube channel as well. So you can find me,
Awesome.
Amputate Fear, I think is the YouTube channel. I'm reading my book, 10 Power Stories to Impact Any Leader, Journal Your Way to Leadership Success. So I wrote that during the pandemic for our ambassadors. And
Yes.
we just put it into a book format. So it's real simple. It's like 10 of my stories I really don't tell from stage. And then after it's over with, after you read the story, you can create your own story based on what you were thinking about as you read that story. So at the end of it, you have 10 of your stories that you can use in times of crisis or change or whatever
Smart.
you're going through. And then I have a social media person. Her name's Jaleesa, and she's a rock star. So
That's
she's
right.
been putting out content on Instagram, LinkedIn, and what's the other one? TikTok.
Yep.
Facebook and TikTok. So I'll go live every once in a while. Would love to do a
Yeah.
live with you on that because it'd be
Yes.
fun, so fun.
Immediately, yes.
Uh,
Like always.
that'd be great. I just come on. I meet an interesting person. I say, hey, let's go live, and we do. We just go live right then,
Ah,
and it's
love
just
it.
so much fun we have with that. And so yeah, that's the best ways to stay a hold of me.
Awesome.
And yeah, reach out.
Oh,
We're
yes.
always out there,
Do
travel the world.
y'all reach out to John Register. It's going to be one of the best things you ever do in your life. All right. So before I get off on a tangent again, I have those links. John has sent them to me in advance, and they are in the show notes. So if you want to connect with him, you want to follow him, you want to get his book, all of those things, I recommend that you do so. They're right below this content right here. Y'all, thank you for tuning in today. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to the Indomitable podcast for more incredible stories of humaning. Remember, my new book, Indomitable, A Foster Care Story, is available wherever you get your books. And if you have any upcoming events you'd like me to bring the Indomitable experience to, please submit a request via my website at daicerullo.com. And finally, as ever, I am so happy to have you here in community with me. Remember, together we are truly indomitable. Take care, everyone. Have a great week.